forum is an online community which is dedicated to getting spirited entrepreneurs, professionals and business persons together and to bring the relevance of wisdom literature. That is the basic purpose, and it's a not-for-profit initiative supported by Basel Partners. Now, here is our belief. I don't want to sermonize, there's far too much experience in this room. However, some axiomatic truths which I must mention at this point of stage. We believe that our rewards in life depend on the quality and amount of contributions we make in our life. And that business must be done without greed and pride and without being implicated in sin for it to last many generations. That's very fundamental. And also the fact that once our basic needs are met, then additional wealth cannot bring happiness unless that wealth is shared. And finally, of course, as I said, for wealth to bring happiness, there must be sharing. It must be done, right? Okay, here's what we do. We arrange seminars, lectures, and conferences where we provide a platform for entrepreneurs to come together and mull over these topics. Recently, Rajiv and I, we were in Singapore and we attended a conference there. Some 340 participants showed up from some 32 countries. And they were all concerned about this very fact. How do we make this world a better place to live in? It was quite surprising to see people from 32 countries coming there and discussing these topics. So what we want to do is we want to actually showcase some proven business models where people have actually gone ahead and incorporated charity at the very core of the business and how it has actually helped them to make it very meaningful. And to create awareness among entrepreneurs, professionals, that ultimately you have to give back what you have received. Otherwise, wealth will bring complications. And to provide value-based training, I'm going to very briefly touch upon this in a subsequent slide of how we provide value-based training in this aspect. And as we said, we want to not just speak about what we know, but we'd like to, hear from you sometime, because we keep having these conferences. Last month we had a conference in Silicon Valley in the United States. So if you have something to share, please talk to us. We'd like to invite you on our next forum meeting, and you can actually share these experiences. If you can't make it, please share it with us, and with your permission, we'd like to showcase that in the future. Yeah? So, this was the first generation, way back 1986, 87, when this particular temple started. And we have with us Dr. Desai and Rishikesh Bhai. They were the first generation of people who actually took this very seriously, and we are going to shortly hear this from Mr. Mafatlal himself about why he did what he did, So this was, you're talking of people at the ground level. They were very successful in the business, but they took the aspect of giving back to society so seriously and actually set an example for the next generation. I'm speaking about Kushal. Kushal is here with us, and Rajiv. Rajiv and Kushal, they got together and they wanted to start an IT business, right? So they approached Maharaj. They asked Radhanath Swami, said, we want to get into business. What is your instruction? And as we just I told you earlier, Maharaj just said two things. He said, do your business without greed or pride, and do it without being implicated in sin. I know Kushal is going to get embarrassed, but I remember him saying that I am happiest when I give. He says, whenever I get an opportunity to share, he says, it gives me immense happiness. So what actually happened was, Rajiv and Kushal got together, they started a business, Apar Infotech, a small business, started with body shopping, and then they went on to do more complicated things. And they set up an office in Pittsburgh. In the first year, after the first year was over, they made a loss of $400,000. And what to do? They decided now it's time to probably wrap up the business. And Radhanath Swami happened to come to Pittsburgh. And Rajiv was driving him. And so he, Maharaj had to just, use the restroom. So he said, Rajiv, can we stop somewhere? I want to use the restroom. So he said, Maharaj, my office is just around the block. Would you like to come there? And there was a turmoil going on inside because he knew he has to break this news to Maharaj that we are folding up our business. It's not working. Yeah? And Maharaj used the restroom. He came out and he looked around. He said, so this is your office. He said, yes, Maharaj, this is the office. So Maharaj was deeply contemplative. After 2 minutes he said, very nice. I bless you. I bless your office. I bless your business. In Rajiv's own words, he said, then there was no looking back. There was just no looking back. So this is actually the, what we want to tell you is the power of purity. Churchill always said, he said, you can make a living by what you earn, but you make a life by what you give. I thought we were very impressed by this particular statement. From your living, from your earnings, you make a living, but from what you give, you actually end up making a life. Here are some very good examples we want to suggest. One is Eric D'Souza of Agas Basel. He actually did his business in a fund-based structure, and he has actually earmarked 50% of the fund for charity. In fact, he is helping in a he is actually based out of Bahrain. He is helping in a very big way in cow protection. We also have with us Sanjay Bhai here, a very dear friend of Rajiv, Sanjeev, and a very dear friend of this temple for a very long time. His father, Damji Bhai, has been a very, very ardent supporter of some of Maharaj's projects. And he's here with his son, Karan. And they have made this a lifelong philosophy. In fact, he has done, he's deeply involved in cow protection. And he's been, working with us. He's invested a lot of properties based on Rajiv's IT experience and all. And together they decided that from the upside, we are going to give a very significant portion towards charity. And this has been a hallmark of his business model so far. Yeah. Here we have another company invested by Agas Basel, and Sanjay Balram. Sanjay Balram decided that he is going to give 22% of his upside. He's earmarked for charity to Radhanath Swami's projects. Darshan Bhagat is based out of Hong Kong. He's just started an online business called 16 Diamonds. And again, see what I'm saying is these are people we actually spoke to, we engaged with them, and they thought that, well, this makes sense. This makes sense. We have to give back. If we don't share the wealth, it doesn't work. Yeah. So Darshan also has earmarked 50% of his profits towards charity. This is Selvam. He is also based out of Singapore. He is in the petroleum business. He was there in one of our forums. We had a Artha forum in December, and he was present at that time, and he has committed 7.5% of his upside towards charity. Naveen Kumar is another person based out of Singapore in IT business. See why we are telling you these examples. These are people like you and me, but they actually thought it makes a whole lot of sense to, make sure that from what we get, we also share. So he's also committed 50% of his upside towards charity. In fact, I was with him last month, and he was actually saying that I'm seeing where I can make an exit from my business. We are actually trying to ramp it up to $100 million. And it looks like we are getting there slowly. So he wants to make sure that, he helps. Just this month, actually a couple of days ago, Rajiv was in Silicon Valley, and he met with these budding, startup entrepreneurs, and he got talking to him. Rajiv, I couldn't get their pictures. I wanted to actually put up their pictures and show, but I couldn't get their pictures. So these are all startup entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley, and they have decided anywhere from 20 to 45% of their business, they want to put it to charity. I want to just tell you, we're a very new outfit. Actually, we just started 8-9 months ago. Our first program happened 6 months ago in Wada, That's Govardhan Eco Village, again one of Maharaj's projects, and some 60, 70 people showed up from 4 different countries. And we had a very nice program there. And these are some pictures of the VADA program. See, where Artha Forum differs from, say, mundane or philanthropy. What happens is, they say, you become a big corporation, you get into the big numbers, and then set aside something for, CSR, right? But what we say is, no matter how small your business is, incorporate charity at the core of your business right from the beginning, if you want things to work out well. And surprisingly, the next generation, Eric has 2 daughters. For instance, I just mentioned about in Bahrain. Eric called up Rajiv and said, "Kya kar diya tumne? My daughters don't want to work for me. They say we want to work for something like this, like Artha Forum or Basil Partners, where we get a chance to meet people and, take this forward to help society." So 2 gentlemen who were there from Silicon Valley are Ron Pitambar and Sushant. Sushant is this person on the left. They actually attended our VADA program. Maharaj spoke, Dr. Desai and Mr. Mafatlal spoke. They were so deeply impressed. They said, "What are you guys doing here? You don't require Artha Forum in VADA in Govardhan. You require this in Silicon Valley. Why don't you guys come there? Come there and we'll arrange a program for you." Ron is the CEO of the Heritage Hotels Group, a very grounded person, 40 years in Southern California. He has a chain of hotels. Recently, his daughter turned 23 and he gave a 150-room hotel to his daughter, as a gift. So very grounded, very wonderful person. And he and Sushant, they helped us to have a program in Silicon Valley. That was last month. Here are some pictures. I don't want to throw names and, but it makes sense to let you know. There are some very key guys. Here you see is Nitin Mehta. He's the owner of the Viking Cruise. These people got, the very first time they got to meet Maharaj. And they were so impressed, and it so happened, the very next day they were to do a big fundraise for a congressman called Ro Khanna. So all these gentlemen turned up at Ro Khanna's fundraising, and Ro Khanna's topic was set aside, and they were all talking about Maharaj spoke the day earlier, and he gave a very wonderful example of the redwood forest. And they were so pleased, and they were just talking about that throughout the day. This is Venk Shukla. He's actually the global president of TAI. And he was there, and he said, "Look, I don't like these religious programs and all." He was very skeptical. I told him, I said, "Please come and sit in the front." He said, "I'm all right behind. I'm fine." And then the next day we had a program in Silicon Valley, and then he turned up for both the programs, and he said, he actually told me, he said, "Rajesh, now I know where to position Radhanath Swami. Please come back next year and just see what I will do in Silicon Valley for this kind of forum, So he was deeply impressed. Yeah, that's Rashmikant Kamdar. Again, a very, very wonderful gentleman. He is very well connected with Bill Clinton and the others. He has invited Maharaj. I think we have just got a date for November where he's going to hold a program for 500 of the most influential, Indians in New York, New Jersey area, East Coast. Yeah. So these are pictures of the programs that we had at Silicon Valley in the Saratoga in the mountains, and this was at the TAI Global Hall where Maharaj spoke. So very briefly, we need your help. We need some, the thing is, we invite you to come and become members of Artha Forum and help us. We want to reach out to more and more people. Yeah. And you can definitely help. On our part, what we can do is, apart from the membership, we'd like to offer 2 training programs for your senior management or your key people in your businesses. And you'll see it is a wonderful blend of business and spirituality. And we have Artha Forum forms outside. Please be kind enough to pick up one when you leave, and just see if that works for you. Here are some international programs. We've taken Artha Forum now to, of course, India. In Pune, we had for a very big group, we actually helped them in the vision mission and to help them build charity at the core of their business. And these are programs we've had in Singapore and in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and they were very well accepted. we'd like to engage with you. If you'd like, we would be happy. These are some of the forthcoming programs. They're actually going to be there, we're going to roll this out in the next 12 months. If any of you would like to come for this, we'll probably have a mini pilgrimage to Vrindavan. We're going to take dates from Maharaj. The next Artha Forum will happen this year in Pune. It'll be a full-fledged program. The Pune people are already preparing for that particular thing. And Mumbai, of course, we'd like to have a big event. We just wanted to have an hour of discussion with you before we actually hold a big program. And of course, Silicon Valley next year again. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your patient hearing. Of course, needless to say, Radhanath Swami is actually the inspiration behind all these programs. And many of us here in this room have known Maharaj for about 3 decades. Dr. Desai has known him for 35 years. Many of us have been very, lucky to have been, guided by him for over 3 decades now. You also spent some 26, 27 years with Maharaj. So thank you very much. At this point of time, I just want to invite Mr. Mafatlal to come and very briefly share what you did, why you did what you did when you actually, 86, 87, when you got involved with Maharaj and his projects. So briefly, 10, 15 minutes, we'd like to hear from you. We hope to hear Maharaj from, say, 8 to 9 before we wrap up the program. After Mr. Mafatlal speaks, I want to request Mr. Desai, Nupur. I want to, actually invite Nupur for just extempore, couple of minutes, if you can just speak about the Anamrita project. 2-3 minutes, yeah, after he speaks. Over to you. Thank you.
Good evening, Hare Krishna. As Rajesh mentioned that I met His Holiness Radhanath Swami Maharaj about 28 years ago, and he talked about Artha program, bringing in like-minded people, having a charitable bend. Actually, after coming in contact with ISKCON and the founder, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, and Radhanath Swami also, my understanding of charity also underwent a substantial change. I came to realize that from a statement from Radhanath Swami that the Lord, Krishna doesn't see what you give. He sees what you hold back. This was one of the early statements which really kind of defined my understanding on an approach. And it did not only include money. It's a matter of our awareness, our thinking, our time, all our efforts, and certainly whatever privileges and background we have. So it doesn't mean you have to be at a very high level of society or material achievement. Whatever position one is, and looking to his position, he has no bank balance, he has no financial, he's not had a bank balance, I think, since 1969. And yet he is completely blissful and happy. So he's giving his understanding, his purity to others to improve their lives. So this really helped me, and then I linked it to what my father, Arvind Bhai, had always been doing, because his Guru Maharaj had also encouraged him to give back. Keeping this in mind, I was fortunate that I came across many like-minded young boys who were much younger than I, in fact. I was 31 when I met Maharaj, and these boys were probably 22, 23. All of them were doctors, and they were also seeking the same. They were trying to understand the philosophy. They were also trying to follow the philosophy. And they were in the process of going from their MBBS to MD or MS. And what inspired me was their application of their knowledge into how they could help. So while they were studying, they were also getting some stipend. They would put it together. We would go on weekends to Palghar and have these eye camps, maybe 15, 20 patients. But they were there to cook, to clean up, to cut the vegetables, and also to operate. But it was the service attitude which really inspired them, and then seeing the example, it inspired me. And then from there, of course, we took a management contract on a hospital. A few years later, then we got land by one of the builders in Meera Road, and then we could build a hospital. Several of you, Ajay and Namji Bhai and Sanjay, they've been big help to set it up. But the point is that what I understood from my linkage with Prabhupada and from His Holiness Radhanath Swami Maharaj was some of the leadership pointers. Leadership which we read in the books and the theories of how we can motivate people, how we can develop the emotional quotient. I realized that actually I was seeing some classic leadership examples. Leadership by empowering people, backing them up, giving them the maximum support. Here it was not a profit motive, but it was a motive to really develop to the fullest extent. So all the projects that came, the hospital was one of them, the school where we have, was done with a consciousness to do as much as possible to help others, but with a motive to give back, to see how we can have a common good. And then of course other projects which came up, the midday meal and many others, have followed the same approach, wherein the awareness, the consciousness is where we see how we could give to the others. And it is done in such a way where we, after taking care of our minimum needs, we can do the maximum for society. Going forward, my understanding was that the last 27 years, the progress on the management side and my own profession, as well as my involvement in the understanding the spiritual aspects of life, were interestingly on a parallel track. But eventually I find that they were actually one and the same, because eventually, externally, whatever I was doing, my occupation was to be in business and going through ups and downs. At the same time, the internal consciousness is what I was learning and how we can address it. And this, coupled with the leadership examples of not just Radhanath Swami, but several others who very happily sacrifice their lives to see how they can propagate and help others, was really what brought my father's example to life for me. And then we could carry it further. Arvind Bhai was also very happy when he saw that we were associated with these projects. And I took him by train to the management, the hospital which we were managing, because going to Palghar by car would take 3 hours. So, it was much faster to go in a train. So he was very happy. He said, no problem. So he went by the local, and but he got so inspired when he saw the people and the dedication, because he also he believed in the spirit of how we attempt these projects. So the defining part for me, what I learned also, was that relationship with our people in business, relationship with people in the family, in society, all really depend, this makes up our life story. And you can't disassociate one with the other. The lessons we learn, the values we hold, are all going to be dovetailed. You can't be acting differently at different forums. The action may be different, but the consciousness would be the same. And this is where the consciousness of understanding that we are, no matter what we do, we are actually all just eventually born the same, and we're going to leave this world sometime or the other in the same way. And in between, depending on our circumstances, we may have been in a particular family or a particular privilege. So this understanding has been of great help when I see the examples around us in this temple and in many others, wherein the life goes on, but especially if we see what around us, the kind of uncertainties and disillusionment, not just in India but the world over. I was reading the other day that in historical terms, this is probably the lowest level of confidence that people in general in the world have on leadership as a whole, whether it is political leaders in any country. Almost no politician today of the top 20 countries, except one or two, have more than 25% approval rating. So what to speak of business leaders in sports or in media. So primarily there is a lack of trust. People are looking for, you can see how short fuses, how people come to the streets for the smallest occasion. There's practically civil wars in so many areas. The United Nations was created 60 years ago, but after that 50 countries have been born after that. So there's anything but united. And in India, of course, there's nothing to really speak about. We all know what is happening. So in this context, I think there is a crying need to see and evaluate our lives in the context of what is there beyond just the present, what we do step by step. There is a larger meaning, and there is something which could be very fulfilling, and whether it is in terms of support or monetary support, or whether it's in terms of our time, but ultimately it's really our consciousness and how we relate to people, how we deal with them, whether it is, as we see in this temple, and what struck me, that when we have several hundred people in a program here, every state would be covered, every region would be covered. We have probably people, devotees and others who come here from 15, 20 different countries. So there is no, whether there is a Dalit or a Kshatriya or this or that, there is no caste issue, there is no class issue. People may not have caste in other countries, but they have a class system. If you are not an achiever, you are a loser. There is nothing here, whether you are you don't have a job, or whether you are, in top of the world in material life, everyone has a place. So this kind of encompassing view is really what I think is a crying need for all of us to actually observe life. And within that, at some level, we have our various jobs cut out. We have to do what we have to do. But the primary focus has to be, the approach of how we see everyone. Then all aspects of our life, whether it's charity, whether it is family life, a relationship with our office or workplace people, we will do the needful, but there will be a consistency through that. So thank you very much, and Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Rishi Rai. We'll have Nupur speak about Anamrita. Nupur, we'd like you to tell what the whole project is about and what your reach is and how you're making a difference in the lives of, literally millions of children. Thank
you. Good evening, everyone. I speak about the Anamrita project. This is what the ISKCON Food Relief Foundation, which was called the midday meal before, it is now called the Anamrita project. It is one and the same, but it has been christened Anamrita. And I speak on behalf of everyone. I take no credit for it. And we have our managing director sitting with us, Dr. Radhakrishna, which I think many of you all know, a pillar of this temple as well. This project has been started since the year 2004 and has been inspired entirely by His Holiness Radhanath Swami Maharaj. He is the inspiration behind this and many other projects, which Mr. Mafatlal has also talked about. How this Anamrita project actually came about is a story long ago, which His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj tells about his Guru Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada, who in Calcutta, in the very poor districts, he saw that outside, in the streets, even near temples, he found that young children and dogs were actually going to the garbage heap, and they were both struggling and both trying to find some morsels of food to eat from that garbage heap. And he said that in our country, children should not go hungry. At least wherever I have my temples, wherever I build my temples, I am going to make sure that people don't go hungry. So keeping this in mind, this project for feeding the children did not come about in Srila Prabhupada's time, but under His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj, we managed to make it official, and we provide now midday meals across 8 states in the country to 12 lakh children. Specifically, we're concentrating a lot in Maharashtra. We have 6 kitchens, and one of them is very close to here. It is in Tardev, and I urge you all, please come and see for yourself how this beautiful kitchen has been set up. It's an ISO 9001 certified kitchen, and in a small space of much less than this hall, it is servicing 75,000 children every single day. And to get the food, the lunch meal out to the children of the municipality schools, they have to finish the cooking by, I think, 9:30 in the morning. So they start at 3:34 in the morning, and everything is ready, hot, packed, sealed, and dispatched. And it's very heartwarming to see the whole process. And I must say that in the last 2 days, the midday meal has also almost become a taboo word because of everything that we've read in the papers about how it's killed so many children in Bihar, most unfortunately. But what has actually happened after that, as far as ISKCON Food Relief Foundation, the Anamrita project is concerned, is now that the government is saying that it wants to give this responsibility to ISKCON in the different centers that it's running. And it wants ISKCON to take over. It does not want to award this midday meal project, which is actually a government initiative in that sense. The government knows that it has to provide midday meals to these underprivileged schools, and so it assigns certain centers, certain bodies to give this meal. And it has realized that it's not working with the small Mahila Mandals and things. So I think we're going to have a lot more work. Yes, Dr. Radhakrishna, we look forward. And projects like this actually started by His Holiness Radhanath Swami. It's given us all some meaning in life. We really have him to thank for giving us these little ways in which we can involve ourselves, in which we can help in whatever way. I'm not necessarily saying you have to give a lot of money. And though we do have people here, we have Mr. Ajay Piramal here, Piramal Industries, they're a very large donor. There are several corporates who sponsor us and continuously with us donating. But people are required for so many services. And it's really His Holiness Radhanath Swami who has given us this opportunity to help in some way and to make our lives less ordinary. For that, I thank you very much. I thank you all for being here.
So this is actually, honestly, we'd like to engage with you. We'd like to meet you and talk to you and find out what your heart and mind says. Together we can actually stir the deep currents in the hearts and minds of people. Yeah? Let's talk. There might be, you may have avenues. We'll help you to make it a fund-based investment. Rajiv is very expert at that. We'll actually talk. We'll make sure that, we, at least if nothing, will help you to build charity at the core of your business to a charity, designated charity that moves your heart. We are not here to solicit funds from you, but we'd like spirited entrepreneurs to come together, make this world a better place. Before Maharaj actually speaks, I'd just like to show you a very brief presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, we present before you His Holiness Radhanath Swami.
It's my great honor and fortune and pleasure to be with all of you this evening. Thank you very much for being with us. Actually, Mr. Muffatlal, Mr. Desai, and these wonderful people, this film, they said certain things about me, but actually they've done everything. Have you ever seen a sporting event? Do you know what a cheerleader is? A cheerleader just stands on the sides and says, yes, yes, go, 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 and then the team does all the work. So I'm like a cheerleader. I just try to encourage, but it's the dedication and the incredible compassion of these people that have actually offered the world wonderful services. Real fulfillment can only take place in the heart. The body, the senses, the mind can have some flickering gratifications. But the Bhagavad Gita explains these flickering gratifications, the nature of it is the more you have, the more you need. Like fire. If you put fuel in fire, the fire gets hotter and bigger and hungrier. And that's the way wealth, power, prestige, sensual pleasures, that is the nature of all these things. They have a beginning, they have an end. They can give some gratification to the mind and senses, but they cannot touch the heart. It is said in a cultured society, people love people and use things. But unfortunately in this world, people love things. And they use people to get them and to keep them. That life is so shallow. It leaves us with an empty heart. My guru Srila Prabhupada gave an analogy of a lady who had a bird cage. And a neighbor came over and looked at the bird cage, and it was beautifully decorated. It was actually gilded with gold, and there was emeralds and diamonds and nice ribbons and silks decorating it. And she said, "See my bird cage." And the person looked and was horrified. The bird cage was fantastic, but the bird inside was dead due to starvation. Now, the purpose of a bird cage is to be a nice place for the bird. It's kind of a simplistic analogy, but it's an analogy of our times. People are so concerned with what they have and what they wear and what their titles are, but the living force within us, the heart, is starving for actual, real fulfillment. I write about in this book that recently came out, The Journey Home, the time I spent with Mother Teresa in Calcutta in about 1971. And I remember she told me something very striking. She said, the greatest problem in this world is hunger. Not hunger of the stomach. There's a lot of that. The real problem is hunger of the heart. And because of that hunger of the heart, there's so much hunger of the stomachs too. She said there is only one nourishment that can satisfy the heart. And that is love. To love and to be loved. If somebody has everything else but not that, the heart is empty. And in that emptiness, we have to somehow or other divert our attention away from the loneliness and the pain and the futility of our life. And we try to fill it with all kinds of sensory entertainments and all kinds of accomplishments and all kinds of sometimes drugs and alcohol and just things to divert us from what's within. A rich life is when we find a treasure, when we find love within ourselves, and that naturally manifests as compassion toward others, and that's our actual motivation. Whether we're little swamis just traveling around without any real resources, or whether we're farmers or doctors or lawyers or teachers or politicians or millionaires or billionaires, they're all potentially wonderful if we have a fulfilling motivation behind it. Meaningful life is a fulfilling life. When I was a teenager in America in the 1960s, I heard Martin Luther King speak this. If you do not have an ideal you're willing to die for, you have nothing very meaningful to live for. I wanted to find that ideal. And in my search, I hitchhiked all the way from London to the Himalayas in India. It took 6 months. And I found in India, people were trying to get visas to go to America. Usually not to find an ideal. But that's all right. If you have an ideal, then we can go to America and we can get so much. Or wherever. Lakshmi is the goddess of fortune. According to the sacred Vedic literatures, wealth is not Maya. Wealth is sacred. Wealth is spiritual. Wealth is divine when it's used with compassion for a divine purpose. Otherwise, wealth is Maya. And poverty is also Maya. Is a knife good or bad? If a knife is used by a crook to kill somebody, a knife is negative. If a knife is used by a surgeon to heal somebody, a knife is something very, very positive. Everything, our wealth, our intelligence, our abilities, our connections, everything is potentially either spiritual or material, either productive or destructive, according to the consciousness that the person has, that is striving and utilizing it. In family life, the most fulfilling thing a person can do is leave a legacy for their children. A legacy that will bring fulfillment, a legacy that will bring values. And it's not what we give them that's going to make that definition. It's how we live. It's what we prioritize. It is our integrity and our character. I grew up in Chicago. I'd like to tell a story that I used to hear when I was a child in Chicago. And it actually struck me very hard, even then. May I share it with you? Exactly how literally correct everything, all the details in this story are, I cannot testify to. But as far as I know, it's a true story. And it affected my heart. In fact, I'm going to tell you two stories. First is the story of a man named Easy Eddie. Raise your hand if you have heard of Easy Eddie. He was one of the greatest attorneys or lawyers of the time. He was a criminal lawyer. And he had such a power that he could manipulate juries and manipulate the law and find loopholes that could practically get anybody out of any crime. And because he was so good, back in the 1920s and 30s, the Chicago Mafia hired him. Now, you may not have heard of Easy Eddie, but have you ever heard of Al Capone? Well, he was the main client for Easy Eddie. And he and these other gangsters, they were killing. They were having this business where you just go to these innocent shopkeepers and say, you pay us $200 a month as an insurance policy, and we'll make sure that nobody bombs your shop. But if you don't pay us this insurance policy, we will make sure someone does bomb your shop. And the whole city of Chicago lived in fear, because if they didn't live up to it, nobody's going to take it seriously. So these people, they're dying. There was prostitution. At that time, liquor was illegal in America. It was the prohibition. And they were bootlegging, they were producing liquor and making huge amounts of money. And nobody could touch them. There was a television show when I was a boy. It was called The Untouchables. That's talking about the mafia. They were untouchable. And one of the reasons is they had Easy Eddie. Do you know how much they paid this man? He was so wealthy. He had an entire city block in downtown Chicago area that was his estate, and he owned it. And he had parks, and he had a beautiful mansion, and he had the best cars, and he had an airplane, and he had a yacht, and he could just go anywhere, anytime. He had everything. And he had a son, and he gave his son all this stuff. His son was flying airplanes, and his son was driving the best cars, and best clothes, and best foods. But he started seeing his son was kind of becoming arrogant and taking things for granted, and he was wondering, what if I've given my son everything that a man could possibly give a family, but there's one thing I have not given my son. A father that he could be proud of. A father that lives with values, character, and integrity. And if I do not give my son that, I have failed as a father. He'll simply be spoiled with all the wealth and power and prestige I've given him. And he realized the only way that he could give that pride in the values of his father to his son is he, Easy Eddie, would have to testify against the mafia. Which means he would be murdered. There was no doubt about it. But because he actually cared about his son, he loved his son. Love means to sacrifice for the person we love. He testified against the mafia. And along with his testimony, which opened the doors for so much other evidence to come in and so many others, Al Capone and so many of the leaders of the mafia were sent to prison. And shortly after, he was driving a car, and another car pulled up to him with 3 machine guns and shot him dead instantly. He paid the ultimate price to give what he understood he had to give to his son. A legacy that his son could be proud of. A legacy of values that would actually make his son a great person. Now I'm going to tell another story. World War II. In the Pacific, America and Japan were having big battles at the sea. And there was a huge battleship called the USS Lexington that had several thousand soldiers, sailors, aircrafts on it. It was an aircraft carrier. And a group of about 6 or 7 planes took off together to go and fight some battle at some distant place. And one of the pilots of one of the planes happened to look at his fuel gauge, and he saw that they forgot to put fuel in his plane. So he had to kind of speak to all the other planes, whatever way they communicated, and say, I have to go back. So they all kept going, and he turned around. He was going back to the battleship. What he saw on his way back shocked him to the core. He saw The USS Lexington was just sitting there going about their business like any other day, whatever they do, you know, just making everything happen. And there was a whole squadron of about a dozen Japanese bombers heading toward it to sink it. And he had no way to notify them. All he had to do was just kind of fly by, and he would have been safe. But you know what he did? He single-handedly went to fight against 12 bombers. This is an impossible feat. And they thought this person's insane. This one plane, it just comes in, and they're going, 12 planes are shooting at him, and he's shooting at them. He actually caused about 3 or 4 of them to fall into the ocean. But then he ran out of bullets. So now what? They're shooting at him. He has nothing. He was so wild because he cared so much about all those thousands of people on that ship that were going to die if he didn't do something. He started flying at the planes and knocking their wings off. And they thought this man's totally crazy. And there was about 5 planes left, and they just flew away because they just couldn't deal with this person. He was just crashing into them. He came back to the USS Lexington. He had all these eyewitnesses that saw what he did. They were not prepared to fight. His plane was all beaten up, and it kind of like came, somehow or other landed on the ship. He was the first person in World War II in the US Air Force to win the highest honor of the US Congressional Medal of Honor. Why? Because he was willing to sacrifice his life for the welfare of these others. Please listen carefully. What makes this story so important to me is this person. His name was Butch O'Hare. Have you ever heard of O'Hare Airport? O'Hare Airport was named after him for this greatest feat of bravery in Air Force history in America. Butch O'Hare was the son of Easy Eddie. That is the values that his father taught him. A much greater wealth than having a big house and having a big bank account and not knowing what in the world to do with it all. He knew what to do with his life because his father loved him, and he lived with the legacy of that love. From a spiritual perspective, the origin of love is the Atma's or the soul's love for Bhagavan, for God. It is our deepest inherent nature to love God and to be an instrument of God's love in whatever we do. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he spoke a beautiful verse. Nitya siddha Krishna prema sajya kabunoi sravanadi surichiti koriye yudoi. That love for Krishna, love for God, there's one God for all living beings, has many names, but that love for God or Krishna is within the heart of every living being. It's our nature. But has been forgotten because of the ahankar, the false ego, It's identifying with so many temporary designations. We're forgetting that we are Satchit Ananda. We are eternal, full of knowledge and full of bliss, and nothing could change that. One of my dearest god sisters, who was like a mother to me, she was on her deathbed in London, and I left from Mumbai to go to visit her. I happened by God's grace to come just the day before she passed away. And she was saying, she was a very, very independent, active, dynamic lady who loved to get things done and organize, and she was always caring about people. And here she was with cancer, paralyzed, crippled crippled, emaciated. Her husband had to clean her excrement because she couldn't even move. And she said with a smile that even though I appear so helpless, she said, I have infinite relevance. I have infinite significance because Krishna loves me. And nothing could ever change that. Not disease, not even death. That's my greatest wealth, and that gives me such unlimited importance forever, that God loves me. And then she smiled and she said, but I have nothing to be proud of over anyone else, because God loves everybody. To experience God's love and to actually understand our own love for God is the greatest wealth. And it's within us. It simply has to be awakened. And that's what religion, that's what spirituality, that's what yoga, that's what true human culture is meant to do. Awaken the divinity that is within us, and to be an instrument of that divinity. When you water the root of the tree, the water naturally extends to every leaf, every branch, every twig, every flower of that tree. And similarly, aham sarvasya prabhavo matta sarvam pravartate. Krishna tells in the Gita, I am the source of all material and spiritual worlds. Everything emanates from me. The Brahma Sutra tells Janmadhyasya yataha. The absolute truth is from whom everything emanates. In other words, the root. When we water the root of the tree of our heart, when we actually connect with God's love, and when our love reaches that place, it naturally extends to every living being. We no longer see male, female, black, white, red, yellow, brown. We don't no longer see simply rich or poor, or Eastern or Western. We don't even necessarily see human or dog or cat or elephant or cow. We see that wherever there is life, it is sacred. If we understand the sacredness of our life, we will recognize it wherever there is life. But if we are too dull and forgetful to see the sacredness of our own eternal, beautiful existence, we can't recognize it in others. We just become either attracted or averse to all these external things. Real knowledge, according to the Gita, is the ability to see all living beings with equal vision. And that is our natural state. When we connect, when we access that love within our heart, when we tune in to that divinity, then we will naturally feel genuine compassion for others. And then our fulfillment in life is not just in what we can get, but what we could give. And actually, in that state, the more we get with proper character, the more we actually have to give. Some people think if a person becomes spiritual, they become demotivated. But it's just the opposite. A mother's love for a child, what profits is she getting from it? But yet, I'm a Swami. I never had a child. I never had a wife. But I like to watch people. That's kind of the way my life has been, just observing and learning and trying to get messages I can share. So I have nothing else to do, actually. A mother, the father will come after 8 or 9 or 10 hours work and watch television and go to sleep or whatever else they do. But the mother is 24 hours a day in service, especially little babies. You know, all of a sudden they cry. I give classes upstairs, and then little baby and the mother's. The least expected moment babies need you. What is the motivation that she has to stay up all night when the baby's sick all day? I know mothers, they haven't slept in days and days because of difficulties that their children are having. It's love. A business person, a politician, an educator, a mother, a father, whatever we may be, if we're motivated with compassion, if we see all the needs of this world, all the suffering, and we understand from our heart, we're all one family, we're all God's children, we will be so motivated to make a difference through our character, our integrity, and our efforts. I'd like to end with one little story. Actually, I'm going to tell 2 things. First, a story. Last year, I went to a redwood forest in California. And there was these massive redwood trees. Some of them are 2,000 years old. Others are 1,000 years old, hundreds and hundreds of years old. They're the tallest trees in the world. They're the biggest trees in the world. And they're some of the oldest trees in the world. And I was walking with a friend, and we happened to come across a group of Chinese tourists. They had their cameras, and they were all in a circle around the forest ranger. Do you like the story so far? The forest ranger was teaching the underground secret of the redwood trees. Now, I'm from the counterculture of the 1960s in America, so I've always been attracted to underground secrets. So I stopped and I said to my friend, let's listen to this. And the forest ranger, I never thought I would hear a Bhagavad Gita class from a forest ranger. It was actually, he didn't know what Bhagavad Gita is, but he was speaking the message of the Bhagavad Gita by just explaining the nature of the redwood trees. First thing you're with me so far? It's very important, actually. He explained that in order for a tree to grow tall, the roots must go deep. Because the roots are like a foundation. Like in your house, if you don't have a strong foundation, when a storm comes, it's going to crumble. But nobody sees your foundation. People might say when you're building a house, why waste time with the foundation? Nobody's going to see it. Just make everything else nice. But it's necessary. So with a tree, the roots is what keeps it alive. It's where the life comes from. He said the redwood trees are the tallest trees in the world and the biggest trees in the world, and the roots do not grow deep. And then he explained how here in Northern California, there has been massive, destructive earthquakes. There has been incredible snowstorms, windstorms, hurricanes. How is it that these redwood trees in loose soil and hilly terrain are growing higher and higher and higher for several thousand years through the earthquakes and the storms if their roots are not deep? He told that the redwood trees, their roots, they grow outward. Underground, they grow out. And they specially grow seeking the roots of other redwood trees. One redwood tree is going this way, another this way. When their roots meet, they intertwine and make a permanent lock with each of their roots. That's on one side. On the other side, there's so many other redwood trees, and it's going and locking the roots with. I even started looking at some roots that were over the ground, and they were locked, unbreakable. Essentially, every tree in the forest is interconnected with every other tree, directly or indirectly. This is like their networking. And the little tiny baby redwood trees, just when they start growing, the big ancient giants come with their roots and wrap around their little baby roots to make the little redwood tree almost indestructible. And it grows and it grows. And as they help each other, they all become strong. And in this way, they live to be the oldest trees on the planet. And they grow higher and higher and higher through all the storms and earthquakes of life. You see, our roots as human beings are our affection, our love, our compassion to each other. When the roots of our hearts are interconnected, that's what gives us individual and collective strength and power. As they say, united we stand, divided we fall. And what I got from this story is a beautiful illustration of Mother Nature that teaches us the concept of seva. In love, in compassion, in service to others, we gain the greatest strength, stability, and fulfillment within. Human beings are meant to live in this spirit. Real leadership is to inspire these values. of seva, of service, from the heart, with compassion, due to the realizations that we have found in our life. And I'll end with one little statement. Earlier this year, I was invited to the House of Lords in London. And that was a very, what am I doing in the House of Lords? I was remembering that 43 years before, I was sitting on the riverbank of the River Thames, completely confused about where I was going in life or where the river of destiny was going to leave me. And now I'm giving a lecture just across the river in the Parliament. But I spoke so many things. But I got a loud ovation when I said one sentence. And it really moved me, because I thought this is just a sentence that's common sense for everyone. Ajay, you were there, and Srinathji, Dr. Desai, you were there. It was a beautiful event, actually. It was the green room or something like that. But the statement that they applauded, because these are lords and ladies and princesses, and there were dukes and duchesses and very big entrepreneurs and entertainers from the Westminster area, and there were members of parliament. Very affluent people. But they applauded, and afterward, dozens of people came to me and said that this one sentence has completely transformed their way of looking at life. May I share it with you? It's very simple. I happen to say that you can tell how rich you are by trying to find out how many things you have that money cannot buy. That's love. Money can buy a lot of things, but it can never buy love. Only love can buy love. That is the greatest inheritance that we all have. To find that and to share that in the world is the leadership that we're all crying for. Thank you very much.